Amigos, lo que pasó el día de ayer con Donald Trump en Washington, D.C. es de no creer. Pues el presidente decidió salir de la Casa Blanca, llevar a la prensa a lo que él anunció como una ubicación secreta. Al final resultó ser un restaurante que es muy conocido, el cual queda prácticamente a una cuadra del despacho Oval. La idea en sí, y se las explico, era mostrar que Trump conocía la vida de la ciudad y de los restaurantes, mostrarse como cualquier otro ciudadano. Pero lo que ocurrió fue todo lo contrario, un auténtico bochorno público. Dentro del lugar la gente empezó a abuchearlo sin piedad. Es más, algunos incluso lo llamaron el Hitler moderno. Quiero que vean con sus propios ojos lo que pasó cuando Trump intentó entrar a este restaurante. Pues bueno, eso no fue todo, porque antes de poner un pie dentro, ya habían grupos afuera gritándole, repudiando la presencia de quien ellos consideran un invasor de su propia ciudad. Obviamente en referencia a la militarización que impuso en Washington. Miren este otro momento. Y es que los reporteros ni siquiera sabían a dónde iban. Los subieron a una caravana presidencial sin decirles nada. Pues bueno, todo esto sucede, señores, mientras Trump llegaba con más de 3 horas de retraso a una conferencia de prensa que él tenía que dar mucho antes. En medio de esa espera fue que se conoció el día de ayer que drones rusos estaban sobrevolando Polonia, lo cual claramente, si es que no lo saben, activa el artículo número 5 de la OTAN, es decir, un ataque a un país miembro. Y mientras todo eso ocurría, Trump decidió irse a cenar. Lo más revelador, señores, fueron las preguntas que le hicieron entre tanto abucheo. Le preguntaron directamente por la famosa carta de Epstein. Bueno, su respuesta fue: esa no es mi firma, que yo no hablo así. Un descaro total.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
Did you sign the WFC birthday letter?
It's not my signature, and it's not the way I speak. And anybody that's covered me for a long time know that's not my language. It's nonsense. And frankly, you're wasting your time. All you do is trying to get off the great success of DC and about 200 other things we've done that are so successful.
Luego le consultaron si es que se iba a reunir con las víctimas de Epstein. Y bueno, su respuesta: que jamás lo había pensado. Y ahí está el problema, ¿no? Nunca ha pensado en las víctimas. Al contrario, las ha revictimizado, las ha ignorado. Al mismo tiempo, llegó a proteger a su amiga cercana Ghislaine Maxwell, trasladándola a una prisión que antes era de máxima seguridad a una mínima seguridad en Texas. Escuchemos.
Will you meet with the Epstein victims? Do you plan to meet with?
I don't know about. Nobody suggested that. Certainly, I don't like that whole situation with respect to anybody being abused or hurt. But I haven't even thought about that. Thank you all very much. Have a good time. Thank you.
Y bueno, aquí es donde se calienta la cosa, porque comenzaron a interrogarlo sobre el ataque aéreo israelí en Doha, en la capital de Qatar. Israel alegó que el blanco era Hamas, pero la realidad es que bombardearon una área residencial sin previo aviso. Como siempre, pues Netanyahu actúa como si le pega la gana. Ignora a Trump. ¿Qué fue lo que dijo Trump? No estoy muy contento con esto. Escuchen.
We have a capital that's very, very safe right now.
About the Israeli strike earlier today.
Well, I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Luego le preguntaron si al menos Israel le había informado antes del ataque, considerando pues que Estados Unidos sigue mandando miles de millones en armas a Netanyahu, mientras hospitales rurales en Estados Unidos cierran por falta de presupuesto. La pregunta fue clara. ¿Te avisaron, Trump? Y esto fue lo que respondió.
But we are not thrilled about the way that went down
Did he
today.
notify you in advance? Mr. President, did Israel tell you in advance?
So you were caught by surprise, sir? You were caught by surprise.
I'm never surprised by anything, especially when it comes to the Middle East.
How did you learn about this happening?
I'll be giving a full statement tomorrow, but I would tell you this. I was very unhappy about it, very unhappy about every aspect, and we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went.
Cuando lo cuestionaron sobre lo que está pasando en Ucrania, en Polonia, en ese preciso momento, con drones rusos atacando directamente territorio de la OTAN, bueno, pues Trump salió con una frase vacía. Queremos resolver lo de Gaza y lo de Ucrania. Nada más. Escuchen.
Happy about the way that went down.
Mr. President, when you plan to speak to Iran, I mean, you said soon. Is that going to happen this week?
Yeah, it'll happen. We have that one and we have Gaza going on. We want to get them both solved and ended.
So it's going to happen, all happen this week?
I think so. I think this week or early next week. Thank you. Thank you.
Como si fuera poco, mientras bloqueaba varias calles por ir a ese restaurante, él aseguraba esto. Estamos muy, pero muy seguros en este momento. Una frase irónica, ¿no? Considerando que el mundo arde.
The chief and we all work together and the outcome is really spectacular. We have a capital that's very, very safe right now.
Bueno, mientras todo esto ocurría, el congresista republicano Joe Wilson publicaba que Rusia estaba atacando a Polonia con drones iraníes. Apenas días luego de que Trump se haya reunido con el presidente polaco en la Casa Blanca. Wilson lo llamó un acto de guerra y pidió sanciones inmediatas para quebrar la maquinaria militar rusa y armar a Ucrania con armas ofensivas. Amigos, la situación tan grave que hasta el aeropuerto internacional de Varsovia tuvo que cerrar por actividad militar imprevista. Ya no era solo Polonia, porque también Moldavia estaba bajo ataque de drones suicidas. Aviones de combate de la OTAN tuvieron que despegar esa misma noche en el este de Polonia. Miren este clip, que son de los cazas en acción. Y bueno, para poder entender el contexto, así lo informó Sky News. La Fuerza Aérea de Ucrania advirtió que drones rusos habían entrado en espacio aéreo polaco, amenazando ciudades enteras. Escuchen el reportaje.
Breaking news that the Reuters news agency is quoting. They are quoting the Ukrainian Air Force in a Telegram messaging app, suggesting that Ukraine's Air Force is warning that Russian drones have entered the airspace of Poland, threatening the city of Zamosk. Drones in Poland, the message said, heading west towards the city of Zamosk. The suggestion is that this is Garan's Iranian-made drones, some suggesting actually this is unconfirmed, that 5 Garans were 20 kilometers deep into Polish airspace heading for the city of Zamosk. That is reported on social media. Reuters, though, just quoting Ukrainian Air Force, suggesting that Russian drones are in Poland heading west towards the city of Zamosk. Zamosk itself is northwest of the Ukrainian city of Lviv, on the way to Warsaw. We will keep an eye on that incident, certainly.
Y bueno, mientras el mundo contiene la respiración por un posible conflicto directo entre Rusia y la OTAN, pues bueno, Trump seguía dentro del restaurante siendo abucheado y humillado. Veamos otra vez ese momento. El mundo ardiendo, la OTAN activada, drones cayendo sobre Polonia. Y Trump preocupado por cenar mariscos. Pues bueno amigos, no debería estar solo preocupado por eso, porque lo que acaba de salir a la luz, señores, es simplemente escandaloso. Una nueva demanda contra Kash Patel, el hombre de confianza del trumpismo dentro del FBI, asegura que su permanencia en el cargo dependía literalmente, amigos, de despedir a agentes que habían trabajado en los casos contra Trump. ¿Se dan cuenta de lo que significa esto? Ya no estamos hablando de rumores ni de tweets conspirativos. Hablamos de testimonios bajo demanda legal. Están exponiendo cómo el FBI, que debería ser independiente, oficialmente es una herramienta política al servicio de Trump. Y lo más alarmante es que Kash Patel habría admitido que sabía que lo que hacía era ilegal. Pero bueno, no le queda otra opción si es que quiere conservar su puesto. Escuchemos esta noticia.
A new and explosive lawsuit against FBI Director Kash Patel filed by former FBI executives. That lawsuit alleges Patel knowingly broke the law when he carried out the firings at the behest of the White House, and it quotes him as saying he knew he could get sued for firing agents without cause, but that his job depended on removing people who had worked on cases against President Trump because, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. Joining me now, the MSNBC correspondents who got the early information about this lawsuit. They've been poring over it. Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and senior investigative correspondent Carol Leonnig. Ken, what should we know? What stands out about this lawsuit?
Carol, the most striking thing about this stunning lawsuit is that it recounts alleged behind-the-scenes conversations with some of the biggest players in the Trump Justice Department. We're talking about FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino, and then senior DOJ official Emil Bovee. Look, our viewers have heard a lot about how the FBI has been politicized. Carol and I have been reporting on these issues for months. But here, for the first time, we have an on-the-record version of events from people who were in the room, including Brian Driscoll, one of the plaintiffs who ran the FBI for months before Patel was confirmed and then stayed in a senior job for months afterwards. And if these accounts are to be believed, it's actually worse than we could have imagined. This is a 69-page complaint that reads like a great piece of narrative journalism, Chris, and it portrays an FBI that is totally beholden to the whims of the Trump White House and to outside political actors, including MAGA activists on social media. As you mentioned in the intro, it alleged that Patel fired senior FBI executives on orders from the White House for reasons that were totally political. That's against the law, and the lawsuit says Patel acknowledged knowing it was against the law. He allegedly said he knew he would be sued, but that his job depended on him carrying out the orders of the White House. And what's really shocking to me is that many of these decisions seem to be driven by a small number of MAGA activists on social media who pressured Patel, Bongino, and the White House, often leveling false allegations against decorated FBI leaders. And to give you one example, MAGA activists falsely claimed, according to the lawsuit, that an FBI agent named Christopher Meyer, a military veteran, had participated in the Mar-a-Lago search. Meyer happened to be one of 4 pilots at the FBI, so he was actually flying Kash Patel around in an FBI jet. MAGA activists, of course, were outraged about this, so Driscoll was ordered to fire Meyer based on these false allegations. He resisted, according to this lawsuit, and told Patel it would be illegal, especially because Meyer is a military veteran with special protections. But Patel is quoted in the lawsuit as saying, "I can't save everyone." Driscoll was ultimately fired for refusing to terminate Meyer, and Meyer also was fired, Chris.
So, Carol, it is indeed rare to have this kind of insider account at the highest levels of the FBI. Tell us a little more about what it says and how it informs what we should know about how politics is shaping decisions at the country's premier and once independent law enforcement agency.
Chris, I really appreciate that you used those words, once premier and once independent, because what Ken and I are finding and what we were learning about before this was ultimately filed was that these details from inside the room of the FBI at the highest levels indicate that the acting director and the deputy director were pushing back hard against the efforts to fire people who were targeted simply because a MAGA supporter of the president didn't like him, or the president raised concerns, or somebody had a taste for blood, literally a taste for blood. There was a moment in this episode that's recounted in the lawsuit where the acting Deputy Attorney General tells the acting FBI director, so Emil Bove, tells Brian Driscoll, hey, look, I'm getting pressure from the White House. We need to fire people, a symmetrical amount of firing at the FBI as we've been having at the DOJ. This is in mid to late January. And he basically is just like, give me some names of people to fire. I want to target some people. And he starts asking for rosters of squads of agents who worked on the January 6th investigation. He wants to deliver essentially this blood to sate the White House that wants to see people fired. The other really compelling thing, Chris, that I saw in this lawsuit were the scenes in which Kash Patel, then the nominee to become the acting director, tells the Senate in his confirmation hearings that he will never use politics to make any decisions. He will never mistreat or abuse that standard for career FBI agents. They will all be treated fairly. And he says it multiple times in his hearing. But meanwhile, people he has chosen as his advisors inside the FBI have a list that they are showing to the acting director, Brian Driscoll, of people that they have to target in different offices of the FBI because they are politically distasteful to the president and to the White House. And meanwhile, as soon as Patel is confirmed, he acknowledges to these acting leaders that he's got to fire people for political reason because the president has not forgotten about the agents who tried to, quote unquote, put him in jail.
So I have not obviously seen the entire lawsuit. So help me to understand. You have a list of people you have to fire. Is it as simple as the White House wants them gone, or do they try to at least give them some pretense of something they may have otherwise been perceived to do that might be a fireable offense?
There seems to be very little effort at creating a pretense, at least as alleged in this complaint. 69 pages of amazing scene, but you're asking the right question. And it surely is not delivered here that there's any rejoinder, any response from a Kash Patel, an Emil Bove, now the confirmed judge on the appellate court, or from Dan Bongino, the deputy director. There's no explanation or excuse or even fig leaf given for why we have to get rid of these people. At one point, Deputy Director Dan Bongino says, this guy, Walt Giardina, he's got to go. What is the reason given for why Walt Giardina, and sort of a legendary public corruption federal agent who's investigated politicians of all stripes of both parties, what is the reason given? He was basically a person who'd been involved in both special counsel investigations under Robert Mueller and also under Jack Smith. And that is all that was necessary to say he's got to leave.
So, Ken, what is it that the plaintiffs are looking for? These folks who got fired, is this a lawsuit saying we want our jobs back? What do they want?
Yeah, they want to be reinstated in their jobs, although that may not be practical because this lawsuit will take probably many years to be litigated. They'll probably seek back pay. But I think what they're most seeking is public vindication here and to put a spotlight on what is really an unprecedented change in the FBI. Our viewers may think that this is normal, that one administration, asserts its political will on the FBI. And of course, there was a narrative in the Biden administration that somehow the FBI had been politicized and was going after Trump because there were a bunch of Democrats running around the FBI. That was false at the time, and we've never seen this before. So the idea that agents were targeted for firing because they'd worked on cases that the White House didn't like or because they had done things the White House didn't like, that has never happened in the history of the FBI. And most FBI agents don't know the politics of the colleagues they're working alongside. And Walt Giardina, who Carol mentioned, his wife was dying of cancer at the time that the White House was trying to fire him. And to answer your question, to expand on the answer to your question earlier, not only did the Kash Patel and Dan Bongino not have a pretense to fire these people, they actually, in some cases, were trying to protect them. And they were telling them, look, the White House wants you gone. This is the case of Steve Jensen, who had worked on January 6 cases and was leading the Washington field office. They were saying, look, the White House wants you gone, but we know you're good, so we're going to try to keep you in place. We're expending a lot of political capital to keep you in place. And then ultimately, they couldn't keep him in place because he refused to fire Walt Giardina, who, as Carol said, was a decorated agent, a military veteran of the Iraq War, who had investigated people of all political stripes. So it's really, I think that what they most want to see here is they want this exposed. And there's been a lot of reporting on the politicization of the FBI, but again, we've never before seen directly from inside the room these accounts with the decision makers. And I suspect that Brian Driscoll and the other plaintiffs in this case took very good notes, Chris.
Yeah, and it sounds like it based on what you're telling me. Let me ask you as a final question, Carol. It's really just been filed, my understanding is. So anything yet from the FBI or the White House?
We're looking into that right now, asking them for their comment. We're eager to hear what they have to say. I think you know that Kash Patel has in the past testified under oath that he would never use politics this way. This certainly suggests otherwise, so it'll be really interesting to hear. And I've got to say, it'll be really interesting to see what the White House has to say about the claims that they were pressuring him and Don Bongino to make these steps. One more detail, Chris, I can't help but share, which we haven't gotten to yet, is how concerned all three of these people who brought this lawsuit, three people with about 100 years worth, nearly 90 years worth of experience in federal law enforcement, they put their bodies essentially in front of the firings of many other people below them. Steve Jensen wouldn't fire Walt Giardina. Brian Driscoll said, you're not firing these January 6 investigators who just were assigned to do their job when people were violently attacking Capitol and D.C. police officers. If you do that, you're going to hurt the national security of our country. These people stood in the way of this. They also said multiple times Dan Bongino and Kash Patel were almost too focused on trying to work on their social media communication with MAGA followers and their own followers to try to avoid the criticism that the FBI was getting. They were more interested in that social media work than they were, according to the complaint, to the actual FBI investigations that they were being briefed on. For example, the pipe bomb investigation, the Dobbs leak, that's the Supreme Court leak of that draft opinion, and then also the ongoing investigation Dan Bongino was also interested in, which was the finding of cocaine at the White House during the Biden administration.
And just to clarify, for folks who may not know, the director of the FBI is a confirmable position by the U.S. Senate. And when you talk about testifying under oath and saying, I will never let politics get in the way, there may be some questions that members of Congress have beyond the White House and the FBI. Ken Delaney and Carol Leonnig, thank you both very much for your reporting. And for Ken and Carol's full report, head to msnbc.com.
Y bueno, amigos, esto confirma lo que muchos venimos sospechando y denunciando. Donald Trump nunca vio a estas instituciones como entidades independientes. Para él, todo tiene que estar bajo su control personal. Quiero que se fijen y escuchen esto, que son los detalles. Kash Patel supuestamente dijo que su trabajo dependía de eliminar agentes que habían intentado meter a Trump a la cárcel. Eso ya es gravísimo. Eso significa que en lugar de respetar el trabajo profesional de estas personas que investigaron corrupción o delitos, se buscó destruir sus carreras para proteger a Trump. Y hay algo que es todavía mucho más perturbador. Muchos de estos despidos ni siquiera tienen un pretexto legal. Según esta demanda, bastaba con que un grupo de activistas en Internet simplemente señalaran a un agente para que Kash Patel recibiera las órdenes de despedirlo. Imaginen lo peligroso que tiene solo esta lógica. Convertir rumores y propaganda en decisiones institucionales dentro del FBI. Ahora, seguramente habrá quien me diga, bueno, pero Otros presidentes también han tenido tensiones con el FBI. Sí, es cierto, pero nunca en la historia moderna se había visto que desde la Casa Blanca se pidiera directamente listas de personas a despedir solo porque no eran leales a un presidente en particular. Eso rompe la base de cualquier democracia, la independencia de la justicia y de la ley. Además, lo de Kash Patel, señores, es una contradicción descarada. Si es que no lo recuerdan, en su audiencia de confirmación ante el Senado, él prometió una y otra vez que jamás iba a politizar decisiones dentro del FBI. Sin embargo, según esta demanda, en cuanto asumió el primer día este cargo, hizo exactamente todo lo contrario. ¿Cómo confiar en alguien que ha mentido bajo juramento para luego servir como el brazo político del presidente? Y no olvidemos el factor humano, ¿eh? Entre esos agentes afectados hay veteranos militares, hay personas que tienen décadas de servicio e incluso casos de funcionarios con familiares enfermos. O sea, se les sacrificó como piezas de ajedrez solo para darle a Trump esta satisfacción de vengarse, ¿no? Eso no solo es inmoral, eso es algo profundamente cruel. Esta demanda, señores, pinta un cuadro aterrador. Vemos un FBI manipulado desde adentro, solo para satisfacer una obsesión personal del presidente en turno. Yo creo que no es una exageración decir que, si es que se confirman estos hechos, vamos a estar frente a uno de los peores abusos de poder en la historia reciente de los Estados Unidos. Pero bueno, yo les pregunto a ustedes, ¿creen que casos como este nos demuestran que Trump representa un riesgo real para la democracia en los Estados Unidos? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, darle like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.